How do we prevent burnout from taking us away from the things we're most passionate about? Today, we'll be discussing entrepreneurial FOMO, rebooting, and how to prevent burnout from robbing our passion and joy. We welcome the extraordinary minds of Mr. Personal Development himself, Justin Rambo, and Bryan Flannery of Featured Cause Reboot Recovery. I'm Amanda Ashley, and this is episode 82 Reboot. Welcome to Afternoon Cocktail. Welcoming the greatest mind that I know, Mr. Justin Rambo. Thanks so much for being back on our show.
Amanda, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you take the cake, my friend, for for the most appearances on Afternoon Cocktail, and I say that with honor. I just love picking your brain because I always feel like you have something so brilliant to share and add. So, how have you been? Tell us what you've been up to since your last visit.
Things have been going good, and I believe since the last visit, I'm not sure if I started my 30-day lost and found program.
You were just about to launch it, so tell
Right.
us about it.
Yeah. So we're on our, I think, sixth or seventh group going on. So I do it every month. It's a program that takes people from feeling lost, stuck, lack of clarity, not knowing who they are, not knowing how they operate, to the opposite of all of that. And so I've been running that group for about 6 or 7 months, and it's been going well.
You're getting a good response. So, like, do you feel that those that have been lost, that they're finding themselves, but you found yourself a little bit more in the process of teaching and coaching
Yeah,
them?
so yeah, so the cool part is I modeled it after my own journey with self-discovery. And so I wanted to see how it worked with others, to see if it actually did work with others or if it was just something that, was unique to me. And just the reviews and the responses of people that have taken it, that to me shows that it's proof that it works. And so along the way, yes, there's more discovery within myself, but it's just a joy to see that transition and that clarity from individuals.
I love it. So, how is it like a once a week program and like a webinar? Can you explain a little bit about what you're actually doing?
Yeah, so it's a group program where we meet on Zoom twice a week, and we go over 4 stages to help with clarity. And each week is a theme. So we have foundation, right, which is the first week, finding yourself and or reverse engineering your foundation, and then we go on to strengths, goals, and then we talk about traits and things like that. But along the way, there's emails, a lot of helpful hints, a lot of helpful tips. We go over the DISC assessment, which comes with the program, which is the behavioral assessment. I break everything down for individuals and just the overall group atmosphere. It helps people with the different levels of clarity. So we've had individuals from the group who have gone on to create their own business or start that project or just gain a level of clarity to help them heal certain things from their past. And so if everyone has their own version of what they want to do after the program, but just that level of clarity alone is something that most people didn't realize was so important and that they were missing.
I mean, you're so busy. I love. I mean, I love that you have your hands dipped in. I mean, this is what makes you a great entrepreneur, right? So you have a book out, you have your own podcast. I mean, you have the Lost and Found program. How do you keep your head on straight? And how do you
Ah,
like,
man.
honestly, I mean, so burnout is like, a part of like our discussion today, and I know I honestly feel that like the 2 weeks that we take off from this show, I need it, and I love doing this show. I love everything about my life, but sometimes you just need to take a pause and walk away from it and just re re-examine being human again, right? Because we're such
hmm
machines. I mean, how do you keep yourself just intact?
For me, it is recognizing the onset of the burnout coming on, right? And I don't think necessarily I can prevent the burnout because, we're human. We go through life and then we just keep going sometimes. But identifying the markers of, okay, I'm heading towards burnout. So what can I do to not head towards burnout or redirect my focus into something else temporarily so that way I can gain a level of clarity and then go back to what I was doing. So for me, it starts with you have to know yourself, because when you know yourself, you identify the triggers for your burnout, and then you have
Mhm.
to understand how you operate. So certain people operate not knowing themselves, and that operation, that whatever they have, it puts them in a position that they're not used to or that they can't really control. It's not really of them. So that creates a sense of burnout. And then you have to ask yourself, why am I getting burned out? So that question of why helps reverse engineer the process. So for me, it's identifying those markers to see it ahead of time, even though I feel it and it's coming and it happens, just to be able to see it ahead of time uh, helps me out a lot.
I definitely think we have this like innate red light indicator that like, sounds off. I feel that like when I know the second I start to feel agitated, that's when I feel like I'm falling out of my spirit. And that's where I start to reassess like, all right, I'm starting to feel burned out, like I love what I'm doing, but I'm tired. I need a break. I've played more in the snow these past 2 weeks, like a little kid. I've been ice skating. I've like, well, Beau built an igloo. Like we've been just having snowball fights, going sledding, and it's been awesome. And I needed it. Like I just needed a moment to be human with my son and to remove my mind away from writing. And coming back into this today, I do feel that clarity. It feels, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be here with both you and Bryan, and I do feel like I refreshed. It's like you refresh that browser, and
Mm-hmm.
it feels good. What do you like to do? Like, what kind of cleanses your soul and makes your spirit free again?
A couple things. So the first thing is, okay, I understand that I'm starting to feel burnt out, right? And so I say what you have to do is put your pivots in place, which is your
Yeah.
bump stoppers, the things that you know are going to open up your endorphins, make you happy, allow you to refocus your energy into something else that you love or you like. So sometimes it's just as simple as a quick workout, 30-minute workout. Other times it's taking 1 or 2 days off and hanging out with the family where we can have conversations, chat, talk, and just have fun. For me, there's times where I can sit and just watch stuff about history all day, right? Where I'm not
Yeah.
focusing on my overall business, but it's something else where I can learn. I love history. So there's a lot of different things, but it's identifying what you need and what currently makes you happy in that current situation. And you have to recognize, is this burnout from me doing something over time where I need to take a couple days off, maybe a week off? Or is it just something that is temporary and I need to just move my body, open up my endorphins a little bit? And so having those pivots in place allow you to not stop the burnout, but not let it get to you like it would in the past.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely the recharge is important. But I lost my train of thought. I thought about when I initially reached out to you, I thought about talking about pivoting today, and it's all like a part of the process.
Hmm.
But the reboot, like I was really feeling that, and I had a feeling you would feel that, you'd be able
Hmm.
to relate to that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I forgot what I was going to say. I'll come back to me. Have What effect has burnout like had on your personal development?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've realized for myself, burnout does a couple things if I let it get too far. It brings stagnation where you're not feeling like you're growing as an individual, or you're not feeling like you're moving forward in life. Because if you let burnout get to you a lot, you just sort of stop everything, right? You just sort of want to stop and you want to not do anything else. And so for me, I had to realize that burnout holds me where I am instead of going forward. But then I also had to realize it brings lack of clarity, right? So if I have burnout, then sometimes I have lack of clarity if I let it get to a certain point. And then it
Mhm.
also it brings on self-doubt. So since you have clarity, sometimes you have self-doubt with who you are, what you're doing, is this working? And that's why it's important to not let that burnout get to that point, right? So it's that onset, seeing it, and then pivoting, right? Finding your pivots and then rebooting, right? The pivots will help you reboot because your energy and your focus is being redirected temporarily to something else. And then once you have that level of clarity, once you feel better, once you're recharged, right? That reboot, then you can go full force back into what you're doing with the right type of energy. And so that was something that was important for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That self-doubt is really a huge factor for me too. I start to like really question things when I just feel stuck. Like I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over again, and I don't feel like I'm making any progress. But it's just that lack of that clutter. Your
Mm-hmm.
mind's so cluttered with so many different obligations, and a lot of it, and this is what I was going to say that I couldn't remember. I feel like we, as an entrepreneur, like that entrepreneurial mindset, it's almost like a self-made trap in some
Mm-hmm.
ways, right? Because like you convince yourself um that you have to be doing this laundry list of things, right? And that you have to accomplish these things, and you don't, especially with the social media age where you're always turned on all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Checking your emails, an email comes in, it's that FOMO where you fear of missing out, in a sense where you feel like if you don't, as a child behind me, where you feel like if you don't do these certain things like that, you're going to, Remy, welcome to live TV.
Hey.
Right? Hold on a second. Um, yeah, I think it's that fear of missing out on the next big opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
that if I don't answer this email right away, or if I don't get back to this text message, if I don't, check my social media constantly, that I'm going to lose out on the next gig, the next big payday in some ways, Do you ever feel
Mm-hmm.
that way?
I used to. So this is the experience I had with the first business, and the lesson I learned from trying to do everything right when it happened. And I had to ask myself, and this is one thing I tell everyone and tell my clients and anyone in the program: the reflection of who you are and what you've done in your life plays a big role, because if you ask yourself, have I ever missed out on something that was important to me because I didn't act right away? And for me, the answer was no. So I'm thinking, okay, so why should I let this bother me? I don't have to answer this email right away. I don't have to join the next shiny object right away. When I'm ready, I'll join it. Right. And if it's something that is not detrimental to your business, the email can wait, depending on what it is. But you have to realize you're not going to miss out on certain opportunities because of it. But you have to realize and point it back to different parts in your life. Did this ever happen? No. Okay, well, let's keep going. And that's why it's so important to know how you operate and know yourself, because I did find myself in the past where I was checking all these emails, and then you would get one negative email, and then it was sort of throw your day off. And I didn't like that feeling. And so if I don't like that feeling, and if it's not something that's too important, then I realized, okay, let me not do that. Let me turn these notifications off at a certain time if I'm with my family, whatever the case is. Maybe the first hour in the morning, I don't look at anything. So setting yourself up mentally, understanding yourself, and then going forward helps with the FOMO issue, with which is what a lot of people have. And everyone's asking me to get on Clubhouse. And so that's another thing. I haven't gotten on it yet. A, I don't have an iPhone, so I know it's for Apple, right? But B, it's just for me. I'm not ready to do it yet because I have a lot of other things going on. And so a lot of individuals are like, well, aren't you scared of missing out? No, because what's
Yeah.
going to happen is going to happen if I keep going anyway. I can also get on something too early and then mess up, right? So
Hmm.
it's that understanding yourself.
I think reflecting is a big part of that too. Like I kind of, love or hate Facebook. I kind of like that it sends me these like 7 years ago you were here, or this
Yeah.
was your post. And that happened to me like last week, and I read the post, and it was earlier on in my journey as a musician and as somebody, like I think about when I first started, using social media and Facebook as a platform for getting the word out on my shows. And this was like when I first formed. I had my first band here in Rochester, and all the guys in my band like gave me flack for it. Like I don't, like kind of just made fun of me a little bit about like being on social media. I'm like, I don't understand why you guys are making fun of me because I'm trying to get people to our shows. Like I'm trying to like get the word out. And I just saw it as a powerful tool, but also going from those humble beginnings of really not, you say certain things like, I paid less mind to what I was putting out there, because I don't think how dangerous it was, like, really was as apparent as it is right now, right? People expose too
Hmm.
much of themselves. But I'm glad I didn't do anything ridiculous, because it was at a time where I was much younger and could have very well done something
Right.
ridiculous. But just the growth that I've seen, and it made me think back to how many gigs I took. Like I would drive to Syracuse monthly, for a $50 gig, just to build an audience out there in terrible weather, you know, um, and wouldn't get home till 3 in the morning, sometimes late, like I made decisions that I thought were gonna make or break my career in certain way that I was convinced in my head that I needed to do these things to build my fan base, to get ahead in life and to move beyond Rochester. To now look back 7 or 8 years later to realize I really didn't do that much for my career at all at that time, and I put myself in danger in a lot of cases, and it took me away from, at the time, my husband. You know, time that I could have been spending with friends and in other valuable places too. So it's just, I don't know. It's funny to think back and reflect on those things. I think reflecting is a big part of the
Mm.
journey.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So what else you got coming up?
I am actually doing a webinar of
Ooh.
what is this? Okay, so March 2nd, a week or a month from tomorrow. And the webinar is going to pretty much teach you how to go from being stuck to understanding yourself more and understanding your superpower and then how to use it. And by superpower, I mean like your strengths, you as an individual. And so I'm doing that webinar on the 2nd of March and the 4th of March. So that's something I have coming up. And then also for the group Lost and Found program, there have been individuals that have reached out to me and they will tell me, hey, I can't make the group. My schedule is a little wacky. Are you going to do a automated course? And so I'm turning it into an automated course as well. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And also, congratulations. I mean, you're getting up there with your podcast too. You said you're on you're on episode 86?
96. So I'm approaching 90,
96.
97, 96, something like that. But
Oh
yeah, so
boy.
that's all part of the burnout, but right. But it is fun.
So, do you have any like big celebration in place, like for the 100th episode?
I haven't thought about it yet, just because my mind's been focused just on the automated course. But I usually something happens where, if we reach our 50th course or whatever the case was, that I have a special guest, a bigger name guest, and we celebrate somehow, or I put a montage of the best episodes together, which I probably won't do because 100 is a lot. So I'll figure
Yeah.
something out in going forward.
I love it. Yeah, I know. I've been trying to brainstorm on what exactly I want to do. I think we still have like a little ways before I have to completely put myself in that mindset. But yeah, I want to do something special. 100 episodes is an accomplishment for sure. I know like at 50 I didn't think it was that big of a deal because I like it took me literally like probably 60 episodes to figure out what I was doing.
Yeah.
So, did you feel that way with your podcast? Like, I mean, you're such a natural at what you do. Like, I couldn't even imagine you feeling that way. I had to come through a lot of hurdles with the show, but
Oh no, I still feel like that at times. It's still,
yeah,
I think everything's an evolution. So if you look at individuals, any individual throughout the course of history who has achieved a certain status or has created whatever platform or done something great, nothing remains the same from when they started to the middle and to where they are at the current stage. It always evolves. So for me, I feel like as long as there's evolution, as long as I'm thinking about, okay, what do I want? There's that room for growth. And so there's times where I'm like, okay, well, which direction do I want to take this? How do I want to do this? But that evolution is something that um I can see, right? I can understand that there's evolution because I'm listening to the different episodes from the beginning to the middle to what I'm doing now. And so I'm looking at the growth, and that helps me be okay with not always finding my footing because I know that I'm going towards something. And so it helps me quantify it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I could relate with that. I gotcha. So, Justin, tell our audience where they could be directed to all your amazing services, your podcasts, where they could buy your book.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you. Number one, the book is called Turn on the Noise. You can see it behind me somewhere there, but that way. And you can find it on Amazon. It's in print back or ebook. The podcast, you can just go right to my website is www.versatilesuccess.com. And then the podcast is also on the website. And then if you want to access me through social media, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook at mr.personal.development. And those are all the ways you can find me. And if you're interested in the webinar, just DM me. I haven't had everything set up yet, but just DM me, say, hey, I'm interested in the webinar. It's a free webinar to help you discover yourself, gain that clarity, and go forward. Feel free to reach out to me through DM.
I love it. Justin, take care of yourself, and listen to those warning signs and
Right.
go play in the snow a little bit. It's fun. I don't know about how you
I
feel
did that
about the
years
cold.
ago and I was
Yeah.
I was out of breath, so I don't know. We'll see.
I'll go get a good workout
All
maybe.
right.
That'll do it.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Great to see you.
You too.
Hey, so I am going to welcome Mr. Bryan Flannery of our featured cause today, Reboot Recovery. Bryan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to have you. Can you share with our audience a little bit about your story and who you are and the journey that led you to being involved with Reboot Recovery?
Yeah, so before I tell you about Reboot, I'll just kind of give you my background and lead into it. Um, and so I spent most of my life, like many people, not doing the right thing and just trying to find my own way and make my own way in life. And after a lot of bad decision making and a lot of trouble, I knew I needed to change. My then girlfriend, now wife of 14 years,
Yay.
yeah, I was on the cusp of losing her, and so I didn't want to lose the one good thing I had ever had in this life, and so I joined the army and decided that that was going to be my way to separate myself from the bad circumstances and situations. And really quickly into the army, I realized that I had found what I was called to do. Uh, I was a really good soldier. I loved being a soldier, and everything was going great with my career. Uh, and then in 2010, I deployed with the 101st Airborne out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky to Afghanistan, Kandahar. And on that deployment, I was injured. And my injuries resulted in breaking my neck, shoulder, lower back, hip, knees, and traumatic brain injury. And so I came home and um, everything was wrong. Nothing was right. And everyone around me, the doctors, nurses, whatnot, kept telling me things like, if you just do this, everything will be okay. If you just go to CBT, if you just go to CPT, that's cognitive behavioral processing and cognitive thought processing. If you just go to prolonged exposure, if you just go to rapid eye, if you just do EMDR, if you just do these things, everything will be great. Have these surgeries, go to these programs. And I did. And unfortunately, regardless of the surgery or the program, nothing really improved. And so in 2012, I found myself at a level of hopelessness that I had never imagined before. And that hopelessness led me to believe that I've done everything that's been asked of me and there's been no improvement. So if there's no chance that tomorrow is better than today, then what's the point? If I can't be the husband that I'm supposed to be or the father that I was called to be, the least I could do is leave them some money. And so in 2012, while in a barracks room by myself, I attempted suicide. Spoiler alert, I failed. Um, but that suicide attempt really changed my life in an even more dramatic way. So I was walking from Blanchfield Army Community Hospital back to the barracks that I was staying in, and I walked past a building that I had walked past 1,000 times. Uh, but there was something different. I didn't know what it was, but as I approached, a guy came out wearing a black shirt that said Reboot Combat Recovery. And he said, "Hey, man, you here for Reboot?" Now, I'll pause there briefly. I was familiar with Reboot because my doctor of occupational therapy at the Traumatic Brain Injury Clinic was the founder of Reboot, the co founder. And she had talked to me about it, but my feeling was this God has never had time for me. Why should I make time for him?
Hmm.
And so I said no, and I started to walk away. But then he said the two words that'll get anybody to do anything: free food. And so as I thought about heading back to my barracks room and the gourmet ramen noodles I was about to make, uh, all of a sudden this plate of homemade spaghetti sounded a whole lot better. So the joke is I walked in for a plate of spaghetti and I never left. Um, and so over the next 12 weeks, we talked about a lot of tough topics that people avoid, that people don't talk about. And my life was forever changed. So I started helping to lead this group, and then I took over and led the group, and then was brought on part time and started traveling around Fort Campbell and just sharing my story, letting people know that there was a way out of pain and suffering, and that didn't involve a bottle or didn't involve a pill. And started traveling around the country, and next thing you know, we went from one group to 20, 20 to 70, 70 to 130, 130 to almost 300 now. Um, and
And
so
this is international too, right?
it is. So we are in multiple countries now:
Wow,
Australia, Czech Republic, uh,
amazing.
Germany. Yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, you and I had talked a little before we got on camera live, and it's so striking to me. We were talking about how important mental health is. It's really a focal point of this show, and I feel like we can't address it enough. Because
Right.
we're all experiencing a trauma to some degree. For a lot of people, they feel like they've lost their identity. Throughout quarantine. With their businesses closing down, maybe, or being forced to close their business with all the shutdowns. For me as a musician, it's been very difficult like my identity was being a musician and a performer for years and then suddenly that's stripped away. But it's yeah, it's interesting to see somebody like you and for these veterans that are so used to the idea of physically going through a boot camp, right? But probably the most significant challenge I would imagine any of them to have faced was not the physical end of it. It was probably attending Reboot Recovery and having to give themselves that mental reboot. Do you agree with that?
I do. So Reboot was founded on the principle that a human being consists of a mind, a body, and a soul. Right? There's 4,500 plus religions in the world, and every one of them agree on that, which is pretty crazy to think about. 4,500 groups of people agreeing. Um, but that being the case, what's interesting about that is after trauma, oftentimes we will run. Um, there's things out there for the mind, there's things out there for the body, but there's really nothing with the soul. And at the same time, there's a lot of people that believe that faith and science don't intersect uh, when when it does. And that's exactly what we do is we get down to the spiritual roots of trauma, and we walk through those arm in arm with the participants. And yeah, uh, I forget who it was off the top of my head, but there was a service member that was giving a speech somewhere, and he said, "I spent months training how to go to war, but nobody ever taught me how to come home." Because it is, I mean, the physical
Powerful.
part,
Yeah.
yeah, the physical part we're trained for, but the mental part, and I will say this to give the military a ton of credit. Um, Over the last few years, there has been a lot of resources and a lot of things added to pre-deployment to address um, mental health before deploying. And so they've really been proactive the last few years at trying to get ahead of the mental health crisis around the military.
Well, thank goodness for that. It makes me so sad to know. I just feel like there's not enough ever like that could be done for the veterans. For the selflessness the selfless act of you guys just going out and doing what you've done. You fought in Afghanistan, you said, right? So like,
Yes, sir.
it's more than anything I've ever done in my life. Like I couldn't even imagine doing that, and to come home and to hear your story, like it really tugs at my heartstrings, to know that there was a point in your life that you felt hopeless, that hopelessness, when because of people like you give our world hope, and bring our country into, you protect us. So I don't know, it makes me really sad. I'm so happy to hear of programs like this where you all are supporting one another, and supporting a healthy mind state. I think that mental health part of it is huge, and for somebody who hasn't fought in a war, it's an issue, for many. So yeah, I couldn't even imagine being a
And
veteran going through that as well.
yeah, and that what's interesting is as I started traveling around to these different conferences, I started noticing that first responders had a lot of the same issues, a little bit different, right? They were still facing this mental struggle from trauma, and there wasn't any programs available. And so um, we, Evan Owens, our founder, sat down and wrote a curriculum called Reboot First Responders, and we started offering Reboot for first responders as well. And then last year in 2020, uh, we wrote a quick program. And when I say quick, Evan wrote a program in 3 days, a whole curriculum
Wow.
called Reboot Crisis Edition um, that addresses um, crisis. Uh, Last year, as everybody knows, there was a pandemic that swept the nation. And so we wrote he wrote a curriculum just to help walk people through, how to deal with this. And then at the end of last year, he wrote Trauma Reboot, which is a general trauma course. And so focused on everyday trauma. So our military program is specific around military trauma, around first responder trauma, but Trauma Reboot, that addresses everything from natural disaster to child abuse to sudden loss of a loved one to job loss. And so it really walks through the more everyday trauma. And the really cool thing is because of 2020, even if there's not a local group that meets near you, we can still help people through the virtual groups that we have in all three of our programs, which people can sign up for at rebootrecovery.com/join a group, and then just click on the join a group tab. That's the easiest way.
Well, that must have been like this whole age of, having conducting interviews and webinars, like via Zoom and other platforms, like that had to be a blessing for your program as well, to be able to widen your reach. Do you agree?
Yeah, so we had actually started working on it in January, and then
And
March
then the
kind of,
pandemic hit.
yeah,
Good
March,
timing.
yeah, it kind of excelled everything in March. And so that's why what was really sweet is, we didn't have a reactive, that's the word I meant, sorry. We didn't have a reactive state. We had already been working on it. We just had to do it much faster. And now, even when COVID is gone, people that are in remote locations where there's not a VFW, American Legion, or there's not a ton of mental health, we can still help through our virtual courses. And that's something that we're super excited about. And there's something about being able to walk through a trauma healing group from the comfort of your living room.
Sure, I'm sure it puts people at ease, because like you said, like you had heard of Reboot Recovery, but it just took that one person walking up to you for you to actually acknowledge it. Um, for some people, it's tackling their mental health is so personal, and I think most people just want to dismiss it. Like they don't want to. It's not that they're not acknowledging it's hard for people to acknowledge that they need the help they need, so
Right.
maybe having the comfort of their own home might help, ease them a little bit more into that process. I would imagine.
Yeah, that's
Bryan,
what we've
so
seen so far.
I'm sorry, say that again.
That's what we're seeing so far.
Yeah, awesome. So this non-for-profit is going into its 10th year, you had said, right?
It is. Yep. This year we're celebrating 10 years.
And how are you guys celebrating? That's so exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So we're celebrating kind of multiple things at once, but celebration isn't our strong suit, right? Yeah, we spend a lot of our time with our head down, focused on the mission, and so um, we're celebrating our 10th year and our 10,000th graduate of our program. And
Yes.
so, two huge milestones for us as an organization. And how we celebrate it is by setting a goal of over the next 3 years to reach 50,000 people. Um, so, yeah, that's how we're celebrating.
I love it. That's awesome. And I also wanted to bring up so there's a podcast that for Reboot Recovery as well, which is great. I listened to it earlier this morning. Um, I want to. It seemed like it's not just veterans. It's like family members of veterans. So wives that maybe had suicidal husbands coming back. There were people that were calling in that weren't just vets, but that their lives were affected by the trauma of a vet. Is that true?
Yeah, so Reboot Recovery when Reboot Combat Recovery started, it was for military families,
Okay.
believing that, you know, guy or girl goes to war, comes home with issues. The spouse and the children are affected greatly by those issues, whatever it may be, because it's different for every person. And so, that being the case, we didn't just want to help the service member, we wanted to be able to help the families as well. So, unlike a lot of programs, our families walk through the program together. Um, and so yeah, and even with our first responder and our trauma reboot, it's the same way because trauma affects everyone in the household.
I love it. I think that's so important and awesome for you guys for doing that. Bryan, what life perspective and purpose has your work within your non for profit brought you?
Everything. um, Absolutely everything. I um, over the last 10 years, and you had said earlier when you were talking with Justin that it's been a time of reflectiveness for you, and the beginning of 2021 was for myself as well. And I learned three things in the last 3 weeks about the last 10 years of my life. One, every pain I've ever endured has a purpose. Uh, I may not have seen it at the time, I may not have understood it, but there's a purpose for every pain. Um, I have a golden rule. It's right over here on my closet door. It says it, and it says it in my downstairs in my garage, and it says it in my truck that uh, I get asked to do a lot of different things, whether it be speaking or meeting with people for coffee or whatever. And my golden rule is if I can help one person get from where I once was to where I am now, I'm in. Uh, and the third thing that I learned this year, um, there's no such thing as a lone wolf. We need each other. And that doesn't, I'm not just meaning veterans need veterans, but we need each other. And especially in
Absolutely.
this time when everybody's been so isolated, we have to think outside the box and figure out ways to stay connected.
Amen to that. I agree with you on both those things, and that's something I truly feel as well. I haven't been through the type of pain. I mean, we all experience pain on different levels, but
Right.
um, yeah, I really feel like any misfortune that I've come across in my life, it's really taught me the greatest lessons of all. And it is very difficult to see at the time, and maybe even within that moment and within years of being in that moment. But if you fast forward and you're patient, that purpose really does shine through. I definitely believe that. What has been your proudest moment in working with Reboot Recovery?
Yeah, there's so many.
I'm
But
sure.
there's one. I'll tell you a quick story. We had a gentleman come into one of the groups. Of course, everything's confidential, so I'll leave his name out. But uh, week one of our favorite things to do is just ask people, "How'd you hear about us? What brings you here?" And when I got to him, he said her, and I just assumed it was his wife. And I said, "Oh, that's awesome. What brought you here?" And she said, "Well, him. This is my ex-husband, and he's struggling. I'm worried about him. The only way he would come is if I came with him." And I was like, "Well, that's awesome. I'm so glad you both are here." And he was what I call a grunter, right? So he didn't talk. I could ask him questions, and he would just, right? And it was fun. We let those people. I was a grunter my first time through. I get it. We don't force people to participate. Um, and so anyway, throughout the weeks, there was a week that all of a sudden you watched. We were talking about forgiveness, and as we were talking about forgiveness, you could just watch everything start to click in his head. Uh, and he was just a different person from there on out. But why I told you this one is 2 weeks after graduation, sitting on the couch with my wife. We were watching TV or something, or playing with the kids. I don't remember, but I get a text, and I open up the text, and it was a picture of the two of them. They had just been remarried in their Reboot shirts. And now they're, that was 6 years ago, and they're still married. They're leading a course in their area. They're helping other people, and it's just
Oh,
phenomenal.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, what an amazing turnaround.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. So, I mean, today's theme is reboot in your honor. We were talking about the entrepreneurial like FOMO and rebooting, our mental state. But keeping on the mental health, I mean, for those who are dealing with trauma or maybe a loss of identity, what are some of the first steps they can take in rebooting their mental state of well-being?
The battle to regain your mental or spiritual health, it's a hard one, and it's one that oftentimes we convince ourselves that we can do it on our own, and honestly, you can't. That's just not how we were created. And so, first thing I tell everybody is to ask for help. Google resources. Our programs are absolutely free to participants. Nobody has ever paid a dime to go through our program. Jump on rebootrecovery.com, join a virtual group, check your local. If you don't want to do the virtual thing, that's okay. Find something local. There's a lot of resources that are available locally that are also free or extremely discounted. The field that we're in, being nonprofit, there's really no competition. Because honestly, whether it's Reboot or another organization, I could care less. I just want people to get the help that they need, and the help that they deserve. And so that would be the first thing I would tell them is to, in the Army, we call it shoot up a flare. Shoot up a flare to let people know that you're okay, but you need assistance.
I love it. What awareness do you feel most passionate about bringing?
Ooh, man, that's a tough question. I don't know. Like, I can't give you a direct answer because, the veteran suicide awareness, I think I'm super passionate about, but at the same time, we've been beating that bell for 7 years. It's not time for action or for awareness. It's time for action, right? Like, we've put more and more money into the awareness of the veteran suicide problem over the last 6 years than ever before, and the numbers still climbing. And if that's the case, that tells me less awareness, more action. I'm super passionate about fathers taking responsibility with their children and being the fathers they were called to be. I'm super passionate about spiritual health. I'm super passionate about mental health. And so if I had to pick one, I couldn't.
I don't think you have to. I know I feel passionate about multiple things too, and those I think they all align in everything you had just mentioned. You know, it that spiritual alignment is what kind of pulls those things together, and it's probably making it difficult to just zone in on one of them.
That's right.
So yeah, what's up and coming for Reboot Recovery?
Yeah, so we're in that phase where we got a ton of groups that are getting ready to kick off all over the nation. Our virtual groups most of them are had either started last week or are starting in the next few weeks. Yeah, I don't know. I could probably talk to Evan, see if we could write another program. Just kidding. That's not happening. Yeah, we've got some big events in May and November, but we're still kind of in the planning with the pandemic going on. We're having to make adjustments and yeah, just
So
helping
you were
people.
saying that I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're saying you guys typically do like fundraisers. I mean, how could we be a part of the cause? How could we help and contribute to Reboot Recovery?
Yeah, great question. So right on our website, rebootrecovery.com, we're a lot of our giving campaigns that we usually do, we're in the middle of refocusing those. Usually we do like big fundraising events where people come in and our graduates are there and they tell their stories of how they've overcome trauma in their life. And with the pandemic, last year we did it virtually. This year we're trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do that. And so the website's a great place. The website is filled with testimonies. It's filled with people sharing their story as well. And at the same time, you can download sample chapters. So maybe this is something you want to lead. You're interested in becoming one of our leaders. There's a spot right on our website to download a sample chapter and to book a call with me, actually, to get a group going. And so, yeah, we try to do, sorry about that. We try to do as much as we could to really make our website a one-stop shop to not only gain knowledge of who we are and what we're doing, but to take part and to join us with helping people overcome trauma together.
Bryan, thank you so much for your service. I mean, for serving our country, for serving the wounded, spiritually, and for just bringing forth such a good energy to our show today. Thank you. And to everybody back home, please make sure you go to rebootrecovery.com. And that was right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Rebootrecovery.com. They also have a Facebook page. They're on Instagram. Same goes for my brother, Justin Rambo. Make sure you like his podcast, Versatile Success, and check out his book and check out Justin. He's so awesome and so motivating. I really thank you again, Bryan, for your time. And I wish you the best of luck, continued growth.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was truly my honor. And I'm excited to see, how this continues to grow for you as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, me too. We'll see where it all goes in the end. But awesome. Well, today's theme is reboot. And Justin and I had talked a little bit about FOMO before. So I want to say FOMO no mo. What role does FONS, fear of not succeeding, haha, that's a little thing I made up there. How does fear of not succeeding play on fear of missing out? All trendy acronyms aside, working around the clock is the true common trend among many small business owners and entrepreneurs. The fear of missing out on the next big opportunity has us tied to our phones at all hours, chained to our emails, and constantly having us scrolling our feeds. It's also the root cause of what leads most to feeling overworked, burned out, agitated, restless, and unbalanced. So I ask you this: what good is success if your sanity and the ability to enjoy the basic liberties of functioning as a human are compromised? We are aware that all systems will fail to perform optimally without a periodic reboot or recharge, and it is no different with humans. The laundry list of to dos can often lead to the feeling that there's no end in sight. There will always be work to get done, but when it comes to your mental health and your quality of living, those things could wait. If we personally rebooted as often as we've refreshed our browsers and recharged our devices, we can heighten our potential and lead happier, healthier, and more fulfilled lives. What measures our success aren't the numbers of hours we put into our work week or how many leads, followers, and likes we have, but the difference we make within the time we dedicate to our values. It's time to start penciling yourself in. Take a break and allow yourself a moment to breathe. Allow yourself to sleep in one day. Enjoy your surroundings. Take in seasonal activities. Take part in events. Surround yourself with those who bring you joy and laughter. Meditate the best way you know how. That could be exercise. You don't have to or sit in quiet. It's just about taking a breath. Enjoy a good meal with people you care about. Talk to someone, journal, and find healthy methods of airing out your own personal grievances. Watch a good movie. Enjoy a day trip to somewhere peaceful and beautiful. Your body, mind, and spirit red light indicator will flash and sound when things are just off balance. So listen up and stop ignoring the warning signs. Reconnect with yourself in all the ways that help you to experience life for what it's truly worth. Declutter and refresh, and truly, you'll find yourself at your best. Thank you very much for tuning in to Afternoon Cocktail. This was our 82nd episode. Huge thank you again to Bryan Flannery for sharing his story, and to Justin Rambo. Afternoon Cocktail is now available on all podcasting networks. We have 81 episodes for you to catch up on, so make sure you do so. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel, where all our video archives you could find at afternooncocktail.show. Big thank you to our show sponsors, Bridget Hogue at Empire Realty, to Rochester Women Online, also to Chris Sirianni at IT Insights here in Rochester, New York. Big thank you to Patreon sponsors, James Farley at Northwestern Mutual, and to Maiden Voyage Studios in Fairport. I wish you all a beautiful start to your week, and we will see you back here this Wednesday and Friday with brand new shows. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.